Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the co-founders of Simply Cabinetry Franchising, Diana and Derrick Simmons. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Well, it's great seeing you guys again. I'm excited to talk about your franchise, your brand, everything you've just created now. You're new to the franchise world. I'd love to get a little bit of a backstory though, guys. So somebody take it away. Share with us how this whole thing came to be.
Yeah, so really, essentially, this kind of started out of our garage. We were in the downturn of the market, 07, 08, where we were doing investment properties, flips, and all that fun stuff. And unfortunately, couldn't do that anymore once the market kind of tanked. So then we had leftover building materials, and we actually started selling those off of Craigslist, the newspaper when it was still a thing, out of our garage. I was sitting there doing designs, meeting with customers. He was doing some assembly of cabinetry. And then it kind of progressed from there, where we opened locations, and every time we opened a location, I happened to have a kid. But yeah, it's kind of just progressed, and now we have our 3 locations, and it's something that we've done for a while, and we figured out the good and the bad, and we really want to help everybody else do kind of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, we really just enjoy the business model. It's one of those things, every day is different, every client's different, every experience is different.
Yeah.
And, we're just trying to look for like-minded people like ourselves to kind of propel the brand and, us coach them through that process.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys are incredibly brave to be in that cabinetry business way back, though, in 2008, 2009. People were going out of business. They weren't starting. They weren't running into the burning building.
Exactly. I know. Who would have thought? We did have real jobs on the side, and it's just, it kind of, people were looking for something more affordable and that education along the way. So we just kind of progressed. And, with the way our model works, we have the 3 tiers, like a simple, premium, and luxury. So people can, depending on how the market is, they can go into that luxury, or then sometimes some markets call more for that stock, simple offering. So it's just us working that B2B and the B2C with customers. We're able to provide those different options for them based on the market.
All right, let's get a little backstory. All right, so Derrick, what were you doing before this business started?
Yeah, so before the cabinetry, you're going way back, so we were pretty young at the time, we were probably in our early 20s at the time. I had a moving company that we were doing. I had a bunch of, group of friends, back when we had energy and,
You're moving every day.
Yeah, moving every day. So we did that. And the way that business worked is it was really, really busy, like the 15th of the month and the 30th of the month, just because that's what everybody's closing schedules were. So we had like maybe a week or 2 every month that I could keep these guys busy doing like investment properties, flips, construction projects on the side, and we kind of utilized the 2 platforms for that. And then, like she said, what happened in 07, 08, the economy turned. On the moving side of the business, it wasn't fun anymore. It was foreclosures, evictions, we're getting in some nasty situations, and it wasn't good. So yeah, I mean, so at that point, we had to take a pivot, and luckily we, jumped into cabinetry and haven't looked back ever since. Wow.
Diana, what was life like back then? Took a lot of courage to do this at that time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I was doing, I was a server on the side doing, restaurant and a pizza shop while he was doing the moving, and I was just sitting there answering phones. So, and he kept wanting to dive full deep into the cabinetry side. And I said, we need to get a little bit further before we do that. But thankfully we did when we did, and it just took off from there. So, it's pretty cool.
What is this before kids then?
Yes. Yeah. So our first showroom in Warrington, that one was when we had our first child. I had him in October. I think we signed that lease in September. We had him in October, and then we opened our doors in March of the following year. So we had a newborn in the pack and play in our showroom. As we were meeting with clients, I used to say, shh, I have somebody sleeping in my office right now. If we could just be a little quiet as we walk by the door. And he'd be meeting with customers. And, we were putting the time in, and just making those connections.
Yeah. And so how did you guys get through grinding in those early years then, when obviously a lot of people weren't doing a lot of home improvement? Were you focusing on B2C or B2B or both?
So since we did a lot of more of like the stock lines at that point, because people were really looking for that more affordable option, but we were working for that B2B. So the B2B is really more of like our cheerleader or our influencer.
Okay.
Essentially. So it's almost like, if you think about it, kind of like Sherwin-Williams. You have the paint guy that goes into their house. They suggest where to go to look at paint, get suggestions, figure out which ones they want. But then they essentially usually go in and buy it, or the customer can buy it and they'll come there and they'll paint. So essentially our clients, our B2B clients, they'll send their customers in. Either we'll handle them completely, or they'll tailor to what they need, the contractor to what they need. Sometimes they'll just do most of the legwork and just come to us and give us the design, or we'll meet with the customer, educate them, give them all the options. But a lot of our customers usually like that education, as we're able to give them the full understanding of what a kitchen, which is our biggest sale, is, so they really know what they're purchasing, because it's the heart of the home.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm gonna answer that question a different way. So the way I see it is that, in 07, 08, a lot of people were upside down on their houses, right? So
Right.
they usually owed more than it was currently worth, and they were more or less stuck, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, what we realized was people wanted to invest in their homes. People, they were stuck there. They wanted to make the best of it, ride that wave until, whenever the economy came back. Luckily for us today, it's a very similar situation. We're at a spot where, interest rates are just so astronomical right now.
You can't move.
I've had
Right.
people come to me and say, I'm going to downsize, but financially that makes no sense, right?
Yeah, they'd be paying more to downsize anymore.
So we're in a similar situation, just on the kind of opposite end of the spectrum. But
and even through COVID, it's just people were on the more luxury side, and anybody would really almost pay for whatever they can just to get product. And since we are such a big player in the space, we are that, some of the vendors call it VIP, or we're just like the preferred dealer. So we did get priority when we do have that buying power.
Amazing. You guys have kind of proven you are really a recession business. During a down economy, people aren't moving. They're doing home improvement. When people are moving, or there's renovation be done in a new home,
right, new construction.
you got people coming to you, right? Yeah. Then you have the construction side of business. When you guys first started this, and so you opened your first showroom, did you guys do this full time and quit your jobs? Like, what happened?
Yep, full time. Actually, at that point, our showroom hours were longer. I think we were, 9 to 8? I think we were 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sometimes we would take turns, but usually like through the middle of the day, we would both have to be there because it would get busier during the lunch times and right after. But we did that Monday through Sunday because we were open 7 days a week. And we kind of tailored it, especially after COVID. People were able to like slim down their hours, be a little bit more particular, setting up appointments and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean,
in the early days, we put in a lot of hours. And again, it's
found the sweet spot. We've been able to do the homework. So now we know we are open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5, and just prioritizing those clients, because those are the ones, when you do have those hours and they come in those times, those are the more serious people.
How did you divvy up responsibilities between the two of you? Who does what?
So the funny part is it kind of depends. Right now, I'm the CEO and he's growth and innovation, because he's always thinking and always outside the box. And I'm more have my hands in everything and just more of like that side of things. So, but, back in the day, I would handle most of the design, doing the design work, getting back to customers. He would be there if customers had any questions about more technical things, or building some of those relationships with some of those contractors that we may have known in the past, because we did do some of these investment properties and that sort of thing. So sometimes he would be a little bit better of a contact depending on that. And throughout the time, I was more on the sales, but he would do some here and there, and we kind of shared that responsibility a little bit. But he was really good at just thinking outside the box, how to do procedures, operations, streamlining things. That's where his really, his benefit comes from that he can really help with the business, seeing those holes and what needs to be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say a lot of the same stuff. Yeah.
Derrick, so you're the idea guy,
Yeah.
and then Anna needs to figure out exactly how to implement all of your crazy ideas. Is that how it works?
Kinda. I mean, we touch a lot of the same stuff, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. All our thing is we look at a challenge, and I think she goes the left way around, and I'll go the right way around.
Yeah,
right?
and
then
sometimes we don't make each other
and-
happy in the
Yeah,
middle.
yeah. But then at the end of the day, we piece them both together and
And it
realize
becomes
the straight
something
line
amazing.
was the way to go. And it really pressure tests every idea. Obviously, that's frustrating at times, but I think at the end of the day, it really gives us a great result. But yeah, I think we're pretty unique where we're both left and right brain. We see the design, the creativity, and then we see the functionality, the reality, all of those other pieces. Yeah.
Business minded.
Yeah.
You're still smiling after almost 20 years of doing this together. So
know.
you haven't killed each other yet.
I know. I was thinking this, because, everybody always says, oh, how long have you been married? And I say it, but I'm like, but technically, I mean, if you would add up the hours we're together,
We're 100 years in.
couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, we really do love the business model.
Yeah.
And that I think that really goes
Passion.
we have so much passion for it. And that's really why we're doing it. There's 100
Yeah.
reasons why you would start a business or get into something like this. And when I started the conversation, like every day is different, we really like that about the business. It keeps it interesting. And as long as you surround yourself with like-minded people like that, it makes every day fun.
Sure. Whose idea was it to actually do this as a business? And did the other person have to get talked into it, or were you both on board right away?
The irony is, I would say I was a little bit more hesitant and he was the one that was more gung ho. But when it comes to our business now, I'm the runner and he's the slow down and do things. It's just interesting that sometimes we flip. It's weird, but yeah, I would say he was the one that kind of pushed for it and said there's really a market for it. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. But our backgrounds, like his dad, he used to build homes with him. He used to, if he had a day off from school, he was going to the project and he was going to help. He helped him do a lot of the work there. And my mom was always into like some interior design stuff, colors. And it's just, we kind of both learned from that aspect. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think we learned what we didn't want to do too.
Look, that may be the best thing in itself, is just knowing what you don't want to do, is process of elimination, right? Derrick, was there a pivotal moment when you guys started and you guys were, running the business where you thought, we're on to something here, like we've got great potential?
Honestly, I think that every day, to be honest with you. I really think
That's awesome.
I mean, it really, that hasn't changed, that mindset.
Yeah.
Obviously you get scary points, last year being an election year, that was a scary moment, people were slowing down, they weren't spending the big bucks, but again, we get through it. It's a cycle, it's a wave, but you're going to get the highs and lows, and it's just and we've been in it so long, we understand that,
And I just feel, and we just know how unique we are. You go to any mom and pop cabinetry shop and you're not going to get the same experience. You need to have confidence in your project. You're spending a lot of money. It's a decent percentage of your home, and you want to have that confidence behind you, and you want to have like a company that has their stuff together. You can go into any mom and pop shop. I mean, we have several around us. Like, we're in a pretty condensed area, but it's just, we've made it thick and thin and have 3 locations that are actually very close to each other, but we still individually have a decent amount of business that we're all able to share because we do prove ourselves in the community.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that people don't understand is, cabinetry really isn't a want, it's a need. Everybody has a kitchen. And people have to understand that, they only last so long, 20 years, give or take, so if
the average home in America is like 42 years old.
Right.
So it's just, they're all
Yeah.
due for the first, if not the second.
Right.
So,
and again, it's a fashion industry, it's trends, different things come and go, and again, it's just, always having that forward thinking and understanding, there's more to do. Yeah.
Sure. Well, we're going to get into franchising here shortly, but before we do, I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on what has allowed you guys to really be unique and different in your industry, and it's allowed it to be scalable to 3 company-owned locations so close together?
yeah. So I think a lot of it is, just the offerings of the the showrooms. So we have like a showroom and design studio, and it's breaking every element down so we can really educate our clients, and it's simplifying it. We always say that there's usually two types of clients that walk into the showroom. There's either the deer in headlights or a kid in a candy shop. So when those two types of customers come in, you want to be able to service them and figure out the best way to educate them so they can make that right decision for their project. So it's all a balance of giving the right information at the right time, showing them the right pieces and elements, and giving them because if we're able to prove that we're the leader in the space and we have the knowledge that we can then share with them, selling is easier than you would think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. I think the other piece too is a lot of times people come in, more product specific, right? They think they need a solution or they need a specific product or whatever. And it's our job to say, okay, well, that's cool, but let's guide you through that process. Like Dinah's saying, let's break down all the elements and make sure it's really what you're looking for. And I think building that confidence and building that relationship, it comes full circle because again, we are in a service business. We are in a relationship building business. And I think if people can understand it's more about that and less about the actual product. And that's about, our employees, our staff, our franchisees, and our consumers. If they all understand that that's what we are and that's what we do, then,
it exudes.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes a full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, I want to switch gears and talk franchising. So one of the most interesting points or facts that I learned when we first met and talked was that you all had been to 3 IFAs and 3 franchise springboard conferences before even franchising. I have never met a couple more well prepared to franchise than you all.
I appreciate that.
What prompted you, first of all, to think, you know what? I think this is a franchisable business.
A lot of it is that we knew that there was a mark missing in the marketplace. Between boutique stores and big box stores, there's not that service level and the options that are out there. So that was a big.
I think one of the things we realized there is it's a fragmented industry. There's no real leader in that market. There's places where you could get product. There's online. There's boutique, whatever. But nobody pulls it full circle.
Design builds where they do the install and everything together. But there's not really a cabinet place that really services that B2B like Sherwin-Williams style, where it's just like you're building that network of business trade pros and either selling to them or they're promoting you to their clients. So then there's really that
hole, really.
Well, yeah, there's that hole, but then there's also that continued business. There's the continued revenue with that model. Otherwise, they're reoccurring. Yes, I couldn't think of my words. But I mean, there are the other models that they do, like the installs and the construction. But if you're lucky, you might get a few referrals here and there from their friends and family. But when you're talking that B2B where we don't do the installation, we're not competing with our client. Those are our clients. We're not competing with that builder or contractor. Those are our clients instead of, sitting here trying to compete against them. They're not going to want to send their client into somewhere that's going to be trying to compete with them for installation, even though they say they can just sell cabinetry. It's just but would I really want to send my customer in there? You don't really know how it works. So
that makes sense. Derrick, what about in terms of the attracting that right type of franchisee that's going to kind of thrive in the system? Since I know, like Diana just talked about, the B2B side of business, is this going to be a franchise in order for me to thrive? I've got to really be a really strong relationship person and get out in the community, not just be in my showroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think that's a big, a new lens to look through, right? So you have to understand that, yes, people are going to come in the door and you're going to get calls and leads, but ultimately the easiest sales there are to make are those referrals, right? You don't have to put in nearly as much work. They already trust you. That
transfer of trust has already happened.
Exactly.
Basically.
So it's just so much easier. And a lot of people, obviously, is it more work to build relationships or follow up with these people? Yeah, absolutely. It's more work, but it's going to save you so much more work on that backside. Or the other way to look at that too is it's always our job to do a good job, right? So we want to make sure that customer is truly happy. If that's us reordering another cabinet or swapping out their hardware, worst case scenarios type stuff, but it's going to build such a better relationship. And then those little things are going to play out more than any advertising dollars you could ever spend, So.
It's funny because We actually have at each one of our showrooms what we call as this medic kit. Because you'll have customers like Home Depot every day. Our One Warrington locations around the corner. They send their customers in all the time because, they might not have a part or a piece. Honestly, they don't even really have anybody in their design department anymore.
True.
But anyways, they'll send customers in and just to have that one little piece of door bumper or whatever they might need, that one thing you can get a 5-star review for, and then they can tell their friends about that they came in here and we just gave them something for free, but in turn that could return like crazy just because, we helped just that little extra. And that's what it's all about. It's just putting in that a little extra every time will return a lot better in the future.
And again, that I think plays into the franchise model so much better because if you can have, like-minded people like yourselves, running these showrooms and, they'll go that extra mile because at the end of the day, it's their business, Obviously, we kind of put up the framework to get them there, but ultimately it's their business. And
that relationship.
And if they can, just do those few extra pieces and really elevate the brand, then that's what we're looking for.
Sure. So you've mastered the relationship building and obviously going to emphasize that in training your franchisees, I assume. What does training and support look like?
So for training, we have our LMS system that we're rolling out. There's going to be 3 stages, basically. There's going to be like the virtual training, the at our locations training, and then in-person training. Because we really want to hit every element at every point in different aspects, right? So you start learning it, start absorbing it. You come to our locations, you see how we use it and how we do it. And then you go to your location and you start using it. So it's really taking those elements and in step, understanding how it's used in different ways, and then being able to use it on your own. So it's really, and being there for the staff and knowing how to help them get through, sales or concerns or those sort of things, or franchisees. It's really making sure we're there for them, whenever they need us for that.
Okay, what about the sourcing of product? We're competing against obviously the big box retailers, and you said some of the mom and pops. Talk to me about the sourcing of your product and maybe advantages of being a franchisee.
Yeah. So it's taken us years to develop these relationships and to build this buying power, special agreements that we have with all these vendors that opening up a showroom tomorrow, you're not going to be able to get those type of promotions and deals and buying power that we have available. But it's taken us several years in order to get these relationships with national providers, and we're able to ship nationwide. So that's why we didn't necessarily franchise in the beginning, because we knew that we didn't really have the infrastructure of a brand behind us that would actually be able to have us elevate to that next space. And then once we were able to build those relationships and build up with those brands and be able to ship nationwide and build up that buying power in the Northeast, we decided that now it's time to really help other people do what we do. I mean, there's tons of realtors out there. There's people that do, pharmaceutical sales that are really good at sales and really good at relationships that would be phenomenal at doing what we do.
What is the investment range for the franchise opportunity?
So it's $296 to $376 for upfit of the location, franchise fee, and 3 months of operating costs.
Yeah, and the size of a typical footprint of a showroom, what do you anticipate that to be?
Yeah. So, typically we go in shopping centers, right? Because we want to be, forefront in the community. We want people to know that we're there and we're serious. Typically they're like 12 to 1,500 square feet. They're not
smaller footprint.
Yeah, smaller footprint, but we kind of pack it full of everything that's really needed. We see a lot of these companies come in, massive locations, a lot of real estate means a lot of expenses. We've really, to really do the franchising model right, we've slimmed it down to the products that really sell and, all the right tools that kind of get you through, because like I said, you can go rogue so easy in this business.
There's a lot of people that start getting lost, saying, oh well, let's do this, oh well, let's do that, but they're not focusing on what they're good at,
right?
Sure.
So they're trying to be the jack of all trades versus the the subject matter expert is what we're trying to be.
I think I went by a kitchen and bath place the other day that was kitchen, baths, waterproofing, and HVAC. That's like, wait, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I think anybody that goes into a business where they start doing so many other products, so many different services, it's almost out of fear that they want to be able to capture business, and they're afraid that they're not going to get enough business in one category. So they venture out on another one and then another one. Whereas look at the most successful any business that's out there, they typically get really, really good at one thing. Like you make your money by focusing
Yeah.
Right.
And I've heard
exactly.
this long time ago cliche by a business mentor of mine who I love. He said, you make your money by focusing, you keep your money by diversifying.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Going back to your franchise tour of the IFA and kind of learning and kind of going through that whole experience of going to conferences, I can't imagine you go to the first IFA and you're probably overwhelmed, right? Or the first springboard. But how do you leave there and then say, okay, I'm not doing this yet, I'm going to go to a second one? Like I would be probably just, at the edge of my seat, all ready to open my franchise. How did you guys restrain yourselves from franchising and for the second one?
So I have been the one that's really like sitting here, like, ants in the pants, like
right.
ready to get going. But essentially, I mean, we did go through a rebrand, and then we knew that we needed our locations to be more structured exactly the way a franchisee would be looking like. So, and we needed to sit, and we've done this for 15 years, over 15 years, since 2010. And, we needed to make sure every detail was written down, looked at again, making sure that it was in a fashion that would be used on a franchise level. There was a lot of evaluation that went around what we did, why we did it, and making sure that everything was very intentional and not just thrown into a book,
Yeah, we grew our business without franchising really in mind. We considered it, but it wasn't really one of the things that we looked for. We just grew naturally. Like we needed somebody to do, this job or this role. So we'd hire somebody for that, or we had an opportunity in this location. So we took it, we grew naturally, whatever needed, or we brought on another brand because we had people asking for that, right? That's how we did it. And that worked, but it's not scalable, right? So when we redid this, we had to relook at what truly works. Let's go all the way back to the basics and simplify it so that somebody brand new that comes from outside of the industry can understand what we do and why we do it.
I mean, going to these events, it's just, we've been sponges, making connections, absorbing the information, figuring out what people have done right, what they've done wrong. Some of the stuff you have to take like with a grain of salt because it might not be like your brand or their brand. It might be brand specific. But just trying to get as much information and why. I always tell my staff members, never tell a customer no, always ask why and try to dig into more details. So it's just also when we go to these conferences, we always try to dig into the why. So then we can really understand if that's something that we need to take to heart for our brand or we need to think in a different direction. So it's always about that education, and that's what our business is about. That's what we're about. And that's what our staff is about. We have our core values. That's the own it, grow it, love it. So it's all about that growth, and it's just, investing in yourselves for a bigger and stronger tomorrow. So that's, it's really important.
Yeah. I mean, like she said, we're just like sponges. We just really take advantage of all the resources out there. I think it's almost like business therapy for me. It's like you get a group of people around the same table that are all speaking the same language.
Right.
It's just, yeah, it's like church, I love it.
Well, it's uplifting because you understand, like sometimes being at this level, it can be a little isolating sometimes. Luckily, we have each other. I don't know if we'd ever be where we are today if we didn't have each other, but, understanding, being in business and this is natural things that you go through and just having that support or just that understanding of you're not the only one. Because when you're in business for yourself, and that's with even franchising, why I love the whole franchise model is like, that whole, cliche slogan that you're in business for yourself and not by yourself. But I don't think people really understand how difficult it can be owning your own business. And to sit there and have that support of somebody that's done it for, since 2010 is huge. I almost wish that I had that because there's a lot that we've been through. And the reason I would almost want to do that is why I'm trying to help other people do it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Is there something you can if you'd go back to the very beginning, something you would do differently based on everything you know now?
It's funny because we were just talking about that on the car ride, just because there's even the past 2 years, it's just like, oh, if we could have, should we have done it quicker or could we have had a different person or done this? And it's just like to get to that, again, like he said, like how we go on different paths, but we ended up getting to that straight line. I don't know how we could have done it otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look back, but it's all, and it's all about, like the lemons from lemonade. Yeah, was that painful? Or yeah, did that suck? Yeah, it did. But you got something better out of it. Even through COVID, I ask myself every day, and then I'm like, why would I even answer this? Because it's probably never going to happen again.
But again, it's just, we know we would be more prepared. We understand what happens in our type of market or our type of business. And it's just understanding those ups and downs and being through, starting this in a pretty major recession all the way through like a huge craze of development that it's just like, how do you even handle the people walking in your door and like the orders coming through?
Yeah.
It's just handling both sides of that business and understanding how to handle it is huge.
And to be honest with you, a lot of what we put together was more not, how do we get through the downs? It's how do you get through the ups? Because like she said, that was probably our most painful time where people were just throwing money at us. We didn't know if the products are coming in or, if they're going to take our orders or, it's just, but luckily, we persevered that. And like I said, that's probably the biggest challenge is like, when it's, when it's good.
Yeah.
Well, when it's crazy.
When it's crazy good. Yeah.
Always a challenge. Life and business is a roller coaster. It's something you said, Diana, that I think is so important. It can't be overstated. And that is about really when we start supporting franchisees, we can't forget that business is lonely and that, yes, you two have each other, but franchisees, I didn't realize this when I first started franchising my business. I just thought how exciting it was. They were going to own their own franchise and help support them. But I didn't give enough thought about what life was really like for them and on the day to day. And it is lonely at times. And that puts the onus back on the franchisor to how do we keep bringing the franchisee in? And you're building a community is really what you're doing. Yeah. You're creating something more than just a system. It's they're part of your business family. And how do you continue to engage with them? Because it's psychological warfare running a business. And there's highs and lows. Like you said it, Derrick, you said it best yourself. Even when things were good, you still have challenges. Yeah. And that doesn't end. But your job is to help facilitate and kind of help guide them during those good and bad times.
Exactly. Yep.
I've never met anybody who had been to so many IFAs before franchising. So I'd love to get both of your take on what was maybe something that surprised you after you left an IFA or a springboard. Because I kind of see it as you came in from the outside, not franchising yet. So every time you left one of these conferences, what was maybe the biggest surprise that you weren't expecting?
I think for me, it's just you have people at every end of the spectrum, right? So you have somebody that's, just getting into business, like brand new concept, all the way up to somebody that's, super established platform brand, a lot of things going on. And, it's just that whole dynamic of, all the whole.
I don't know. I think another one that everybody always talks about is just, it blows my mind, the camaraderie.
The culture,
culture. And it's just like, I guess it's because you get all these owners, CEOs, co-founders, I feel like everybody has a personality and it's just getting all those personalities together. It's just, it's pretty amazing to see. And like the amount of people that are so open to share so much information is just crazy, because you go into your individual industries and it's just like, everybody's just like, I'm going to keep everything tight to me. Right. I'm not going to talk about it. We barely smile at each other, and it's just like, I hate that. I've been trying to build more camaraderie and being in like the builders associations and stuff, but it's just, going to the shows or the, conferences, it's just everybody is just basically willing to put everything on the table and help you in any way that you can, and it's just it really is amazing. It's just like you go in there and you're like, wow, I found my people.
For real.
Absolutely.
So it's
I think our challenge too is everyone we come back, you always think, should I go
you're like,
on or what,
do I really need to go? I really need to work on things. I really need to do this. But then you go and you're like, oh, I'm so happy I went.
So everyone we get a win, we get a win, we get some nuggets, we get, and it seems like, and maybe it's just our perspective, but it seems like everyone's speaking to us at the right time when we need that information. And then, what's funny is I actually looked at one of our slide decks. I'm like, this is great. This is exactly what I needed. But then I look back 2 years and I'm like, I already had pictures of that same slide.
That's so funny.
It just wasn't resonating.
Differently at that time, so it's just, you get
you
different things at
that.
different times.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you weren't ready for that info. Yeah. It wasn't relevant where you were at the time.
Yeah, it was
so true.
We were drinking from a fire hose in the beginning, like everybody says.
Oh yeah, we all are. We all are for sure. Okay, vision for the future. Let's kind of talk about where we're taking this. So, where are we taking Simply Cabinetry in the next 5 years? Do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, currently where we're at, we're just trying to stay more regional as it relates to like the Northeast. So we're, going to be opening that way and then opening up all over the nation. After that, after we get a lot of that rolling and running, our plan is to try to bring our platform to different different types of industries,
Yes.
like
Okay.
Simply brands. So we do plan on hopefully eventually being kind of like a platform brand where we have multiple below us. We figure we just start with the hardest because cabinetry is just if you can simplify cabinetry, you can simplify anything. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, within the next 5 years or so, we will have a substantial amount of franchisees and a team and a larger team below us. I mean, we're a pretty big team right now, but starting that and then starting to develop more brands as it relates because we really do get a joy out of creating things and molding them and branding them and building them into something pretty amazing. And then hopefully something somebody else can use and benefit off of and build their future and off of.
So what markets are you open right now for?
So we want, like she said, we want to stay local. Obviously, around Philadelphia is things we have our eyes set pretty.
Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
But the broader picture is Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, potentially New York. But yeah, we see a lot of opportunity right there.
Yeah,
obviously there's
around us right now.
There's a lot of hot markets, hot skipping a jump away that we're also looking at. But again, nothing's off the books right now, but I mean
that's our focus.
Yeah, that's our focus. You have to focus somewhere. So again, like I said, if we had to focus, it's going to be in our backyard. There's enough opportunity here.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. If someone was interested in learning more about the franchise opportunity, where would they go?
We have our website, simplycabinetryfranchising.com, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Derrick on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to share more.
Awesome. All right. Well, why is now a great time to become a franchisee?
Oh, the market's going crazy. Everybody wants to renovate, and you got to, right now, if any, is the time to really invest in yourself.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing. Just investing in yourself, taking that next step. If you're out there looking for a job, like who else would invest in yourself other than yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
bring that power back to yourself.
Yeah. Great advice. Fantastic. Okay. One last question for you. I finish every podcast with what I call the franchise tip jar, because as you said, Diana, the community is so generous with sharing information. So if a friend came to you, was interested in maybe becoming a franchisee of another brand, what would be a piece of advice maybe you'd give them to ensure they're not making a mistake and they're picking the right franchise for them?
I mean, I would definitely just do my homework and not just focus on one brand. You always want to kind of see what other options are out there and get, something that speaks to you, because essentially there are a lot of brands out there. There's a lot of different, concepts, feelings, and core values that a company holds. And, the hardest part is to transfer somebody to your own core values that don't already inherently have them. So honing in and focusing on, your goals and who you are is a big important thing, I think.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great seeing you. I wish you all the best and continued success with the company. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
It's nice
Frank.
talking. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.